the actual event, maybe the, in quotes, bad event, the unfortunate event. I did something to my foot. Can't always control that, and indeed it causes pain and discomfort. I hurt my foot. But the second arrow is the message, the thoughts that go through our minds in response to the first arrow. And that blew me away when I first heard that, because that's where my suffering comes from. Again, events aren't always in our control, right? Pain may follow, physical, emotional, it's part of living. But some of the suffering is optional. That when we encounter something that leads to pain or just dissatisfaction, what we do, what I do, some of you might relate, is start up a whole bunch of mental processes. These are the second and the third and the fourth and the fifth arrows which lead to and deepen our suffering. But that's our choice. That's optional. Sprained my ankle, it was painful, ouch, that hurts, it hurts. First arrow, unfortunate, it sucks. But I had a choice how to proceed next. What drives the majority of my suffering was not my sprained ankle, it was the arrows that followed, the arrows that I shoot, which differentiated from the actual event. Those arrows, like I said, are the self-messages that I pile on top of the pain. All these things I'm telling myself, which are sometimes like a freight train going through my mind. Does some of that resonate for some of you folks? Right? It feels like a human thing to me. Oh, how could I be so stupid? Who left the chair there? Oh my God. Oh, I might not be able to go to that thing. Will I have to go to the doctor's? Oh God, I hope he doesn't put me on crutches. That would be terrible. I'm going to gain so much weight, I can't go to the gym. Let me just touch it again to see if, ouch! Some of us are off and running up here. As we grieve, lament, beat our breasts, obsess, become distraught from all the things we tell ourselves. I'm not sure we can do much about having thoughts, but we don't have to believe what we're telling ourselves. Like a friend once told me, sometimes I have thoughts, Roy. That's not the problem. But sometimes I believe them. We feed those thoughts. We feed them morsels of catastrophizing, spoonfuls of shoulds, supersized portions of worry, and in doing so, we're feeding the suffering. We are the archers with the bow and pointed, sometimes very poisonous arrows. But how do we refrain from shooting endless arrows which prolong our suffering? Buddha reminds us, suffering comes from wanting things to be different than the way they are. Aversion, pushing something away that's painful, unpleasant, and then clinging, grasping onto something that feels better, that's happier. Both lead to suffering. That feels bad to me, I want it gone now. This feels good to me, I want it to last forever. And that's so often where I get myself into trouble. And it's so human, I think. If we feel good, we want to stay there. We want to cling to that source of pleasure. A person, an event, a place. But since all sources of pleasure are not permanent, we end up causing ourselves more suffering if we cling to them. If we don't feel good, how can we get back to feeling good? Torture ourselves shooting those multiple internal arrows, for nothing is meant to stay the same. We might as well rail against gravity. Right? Great line, not mine, but great line. I don't know where I got it from. Excuse me. Still, I keep hurting myself, touching the sore spot every few minutes, shooting those arrows. That suffering I've imposed has nothing to do with the original incident. Pain, losses, challenges of life, we can't avoid them. They're inevitable. Well, what role do you take in prolonging the suffering or the pain? What arrows do you shoot that keep a wound raw or oozing or bleeding? Arrows of, what if that happened? Arrows of awfulizing, catastrophizing something. Arrows can originate from 50 years ago. The ego remembers and it knows how to stay alive. Now that's deep programming. The more we shoot those arrows, and you know, I had hoped to use snowballs as a metaphor, as my own metaphor. It's winter, but instead I'm dealing with allergies. I'm still going to use snowballs as a metaphor. The snowballs we throw at ourselves. The more we shoot the arrows, the snowballs, the more we're nourishing our egos, strengthening that synapse, building deeper grooves in our brains, literally building deeper grooves in our brain, and choosing paths of fear, sadness, anxiety, suffering. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I. Okay, so here's a sign, and here it says, suffering for the next 20 miles. Here's another sign that says, peace as soon as you merge onto it. The arrows distance me from a true purpose when I shoot them and take me down the road of suffering. On the other hand, unity thinking is about regaining the perspective. I can choose again whenever my peace is shaken. I can elect to change all thoughts and I can go down the road of peace. I want to be clear with you who don't know me. I don't do that. I work towards it, and I do that at moments. I stand up here as a human being telling you that's what pulls me into unity, okay? And to have community that reminds me of that. I just didn't want you to think, oh, wow. In The Thunder of Silence, Joel Goldsmith says the secret lies in making the transition from a thinking human mind to a mind at rest in a state of awareness. A state of awareness. To observe, notice, not to get sucked in the whirlwind of thoughts. So, experiencing discomfort, acknowledging it, I sprained my ankle, it's painful, but not letting my thoughts run amok to, oh my God, to being alone, to be without friends, food, oh my God, I'll never have ice cream again because I stubbed my toe. For me, it's natural to obsess, okay? This discomfort, I jump. This is bad. It's awful. It shouldn't be like that. I give it a lot of attention because I want it to go away. Rather than simply notice it, and as Buddhists say, to cultivate a patient, non-reactive, curious attitude towards the experience that seems unpleasant. Not labeling it as terrible, but it means being vigilant about my thoughts, being aware. Now, with vigilance comes odd surprises. But when we're open to being aware, it's pretty remarkable what we find out. What I became aware of with my increased spiritual vigilance was that when I'd wake up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, I would actually think there was something I was concerned about. What was I anxious about? There was something. See, I realized that I spend time actually seeking discomfort out. Trying to recall upsetting circumstances when I'm not thinking about them. That was a powerful awareness for me. Oh, and let me assure you, I did access them before I went back to bed. Here I am, actively accessing pain that's not present or relevant at the moment. Job well done, Roy. Your road of suffering has become a superhighway, but you're making yourself hurt, and that's a hefty toll. Healing is a process, not an event. It takes time. I still have this belief that for me, healing needs to happen in my time, and that there's something wrong when it doesn't. I get past that much quicker. I've little patience. As I get older, my body actually takes longer to heal from injuries. How did that happen? I'm aware during the past few years, I've been given a lot of chances to learn patience about that. And I slowly am. and to experience not in my time, to be present with my healing process without shooting arrow after arrow and giving myself all these self-inflicted wounds. I'm part of the healing process. You are part of the healing process. We can influence it. We're not in charge. No matter how many times I touch that spot that hurts, I'm not in charge. Obsessiveness does not put me in charge. Clinging to those thoughts does not put me in charge. Now, somewhere I learned that obsessing and worrying did. Actually, I learned that thinking from my father, who probably learned it from his father, who probably learned it, so on and on and on. But I'm 68. I'm not going to blame him anymore, you know? Terry Gross on NPR, some of you might listen to her. She does a show called Fresh Air. She was with a guest who grew up Jewish. She said, I think there's this idea that negative thinking was actually a very helpful approach. If you worry about something, that's armor. If it happens, then you've been protected because you worried about it, you've prepared yourself for it. The power of worrying, my armor. Well, that's just magical thinking. Another one of my illusions of control that hurts and not protects. Someone said it's a misinterpretation of an event, and that belief got solidified. Worrying as armor. Really? Alan Cohn reminds us that worry is the power of creation turned against your own best interest. Now, what kind of Christ consciousness is that when what I think are my best interests only bind me closer to the world of illusion? Our beliefs get solidified, and when they're not in our own best interest, we're singing songs of praise to the ego. Anne Lamott, wonderful spiritual writer, she talks about being a recovering higher power, and guess I am too. She says, thank God I am in charge of so little. I am in charge of caring for my animals, shopping for my family, mostly doing the dishes and housework, trying not to eat much sugar, to get my work done, pouring myself into union with God through prayer, stillness, service. If I were in charge of much more, my life would be a cross between Monkey Island and Long Day's journey into night. Instead, it is beautiful, odd, precious, exquisite, and sometimes very hard. Thank God I am in charge of so little, and thank God I am never alone. Those arrows of control are an illusion. And we all have to be careful of how we're talking to ourselves because we're listening. Our thoughts are prayers, and you know the rest. What's worse is that we can so easily think that's the voice of God. That those arrows that we're shooting that follow an incident that we shoot to help perhaps not follow, perhaps anticipatory, to prepare for something. I get into trouble with that too, those famous and debilitating anticipatory arrows. We sometimes think they're divine truth, divine guidance, just because we're so used to them. They might feel like home. Does God speak, or does your wounded self speak? It's hard to distinguish between the two, says on Renew It. We might as well listen to that voice when we're high, when we're drunk. That's usually not a path that we want to follow. Much of the soul's soil is packed hard on paths of worry and hurry as we pace from one cause to another, one appointment to another, one bill to another, our brains plotting the same old anxious grooves, says Caleb McClure. When the seeds of a new idea, a fresh perspective, a creative impulse come, we are apt even to take notice, let alone act, before they are we apt even to take notice, let alone act, before they're gobbled up by the familiar urgencies that make their endless rounds. Familiar urgencies can make it impossible to allow us to transition from a thinking mind to a mind at rest, in a state of awareness. Aware of this moment, Our thoughts are prayers, and those thoughts can hurt, belittle, reinforce our unworthiness. They can maim, our thoughts can eviscerate, and our thoughts can sometimes kill. But the good news is that we are not our thoughts. You're not the voices that hurt, shame, and belittle. Those aren't your higher power voices either. They may be your Aunt Joanne's voice. They may be your high school gym teacher's voice. Coach Roach used to call me Dewdrop. Maybe your boss telling you you're incompetent, that you're lazy and not a team player. Maybe it's society's voice telling you not to trust people who look a certain way and who come from a certain place. In A New Earth, Eckhart Tolle says, notice the voice in your head, recognize it for what it is. The voice of the ego, no more than a conditioned mind pattern, a thought, and realize that you are not the voice, but you are the one who is aware of it. I am not the voice, but the one who is aware of it. Thank God. But first, we really have to notice the voice in our head. Again, I think it so much starts with awareness. In Untethered Soul, the author says, you're not the voice of the mind, you're the one who hears it. We are not the voice, but we have to notice it to do something about that conditioned mind pattern. We have those Velcro thoughts, which cling and adhere to us. Instead, we are not the Velcro thoughts. We are the ones who are aware of them. We're the ones who hear it. At times I operated as if I was that voice. I defend, I attack, I judge, I blame, I protect, as if I was on a battlefield. No safety on a battlefield. And war guarantees ego survival because the ego becomes strong in that strife. When I am in my head, I am behind enemy lines. I've said that before here. There is no safety there. My God wouldn't put me behind enemy lines. Unity's God or higher power wouldn't do that either. Some people's God may indeed do that. Wonder if they've created that God in their own image. Anne Lamott says, you can tell you've created God in your own image when God hates the same people you do. Wow. We need a different perspective of distance, of awareness, from a mind at rest. The Course in Miracles says, be lifted up, from a higher place look down upon it. From there will your perspective be quite different. Here in the midst of it, it does seem real. When the temptation to attack rises to make your mind, remember, you can see the battle from above. Seeing it from above. Tolle says, imagine seeing it from a balcony. That shift in perception is the miracle in Course in Miracles. Tolle says that is our higher self, not the freight train running through our heads. That's where God speaks to us, and we can hear it. But we have to be willing to change our mind about a situation. I think we need to give up right and wrong and good and bad or win or lose kind of thinking. Help me give up my limited view. Help me see this as you would see it. To choose eyeglasses of clarity, not choosing from Ralph Lauren's fear collection, you know? Not from the perspective of fear and attack based on a belief that I'm in the midst of a raging battle where I have to defend myself. We don't find ourselves in the midst of battles, attacking, protecting ourselves, surrounded by fear and chaos, where our thoughts feel real. Course tells us that those are thoughts we have written on the world and to see the Word of God in their place. How do we do that? Well, Goldsmith says by separating thinking and awareness, because thinking and awareness are separate experiences. Charles Fillmore reminds us every thought expressed by the mind radiates an energy. With that energy, we shoot arrows, poke at the hurts, repeat the same messages, and take the same actions, and then we're surprised and disappointed when a fig tree does not grow in our yard even though we planted an apple tree or planted poison ivy. Help us see this as you would see, to change our minds, see things from a new perspective, and to choose the higher road. Not always easy, so you come here. So I go to my church. So I stand up and I write these words and I say them to help integrate it. We're a village. Help us learn, actually unlearn, undo what we've learned to remind us to be in the world, not of the world. Come to unity to shift our perception, to remind us that we have a choice, to remind us that if we don't like what we're feeling now, there's another way. That when we are not at peace, we have decided wrongly, we can decide otherwise and choose again. Roy, if that hurts each time you press your ankle, try something else. Maybe don't press your ankle. Ooh, good idea. If you had a tally at the end of your life, or monthly, weekly, actually, let's kind of break it down. Weekly. Tally of how you've spent your time. How much of it would be thinking thoughts that are hurtful to you? How much of it would be time hurting yourself? And I mean worrying, obsessing as something that we do to hurt ourselves. Putting ourselves down. Holding on to anger, separating ourselves from another. Well, what is your purpose being here? And just what does hurting yourself have to do with that purpose? Friends, stop making yourselves hurt. Don't dwell on that thought or that one or, oh, I see your second arrow, be gone. A while back, I learned from a much more positive friend how to answer, so how are you? When he heard me respond, kvetchy. You know what kvetchy is? He heard me respond kvetchy once too much. He says, how are you? Better than I think I am. So now when I'm asked, so who are you? Maybe I'll respond, I'm the one who hears the voice in my mind, the one who is aware of it. And who are you? Because when we're the one who is aware of that voice, that's our higher self. That higher self does not want us to hurt. So put down your bows, put down your arrows, and you know, if you must throw snowballs, make sure they're made of cotton. Got it! Blessings. And now, it's time to go into the meditation together, a time of silence, and to listen. To pay attention on purpose in this moment, in the present. And to breathe. Naturally, just breathe. Be aware of that natural breath. Modify it if you need to do so. What parts of your body move as you breathe? What parts of your body do you need to breathe into? Watch as thoughts come and go. This isn't the time to try to understand the things that float to the surface of your consciousness. It's time of awareness. A mind at rest. Just notice. Observe the thoughts as they flow past without attaching to any of them. Let them dissolve like snowflakes falling on a warm pond. And as you observe them, realize that you are not that thought, or the next one, or the one after that. Who you are is the one who is aware of it. For you are not the voices of the mind. You are the one who hears them. And as we go into the silence, observe each thought. And with each new thought, repeat to yourself, I am not that thought. I am the one who is aware of it. I am not that thought. I am the one who is aware of it. I do not allow my mind to be used by suggestion, by outside influences, or by outside opinions or theories. I do not hold on to messages from my wounded self. Today, I make my mind an instrument for the truth of spirit. And as we gently come back to the room, to our community, and to our thoughts, we tell ourselves, my mind is an instrument for the truth of spirit. And so it is.